Thomas Krag.
Yes.
Thank you for being here. We're really happy to have this chance of talking to you today, because you were a crucial part of the outcome of our film, We're the Thousand. We called you a year ago, exactly a year ago, basically,
Yeah.
to come and work with us on a film that was already edited somehow, but needed still some adjustments, some changing, some structural changes. And we called you, and you arrived like for a week with us, and it was extremely useful and extremely interesting experience with you. So we thought, how we would like to tell us, how does that work? Your job of, you are an editor, experienced editor. You've been working with great directors in the past, Lars Von Trier, many others. And now sometimes you edit a full film, sometimes you jump into a film that has already, been edited to kind of save it, I would say. So how does that work? What are the steps to jump in a pre-edited film?
Well, the big thing for me is that I am a film editor, because that's what I've been using most of my life, is editing. And in the first place, who the hell wants to become a film editor? What is that? You sit in a dark, small room, you have a lot of trouble, you have a lot of material. There's always somebody, knocking you, either the film, the director, or the producer, or some kind of deadline. But the thing is that if you fall in love with the process of editing, you know that it's fantastic because it's unpredictable. It can always change. It can, the small moves you make, the small decisions you take can change scenes completely. So the magic of film editing keeps you to it, so to say. You can always find something that's new territory or has not been tried before that will help the film. So in my case, with this background, I still like editing. I love editing. I've been doing a lot of things around that process as an editor, primarily teaching. And nowadays, where we met in the dok.incubator, supervising on projects on how can the film become better? How can I help the director, the editor, and the producer lift the film and push the process and challenge the director to try and be brave. And still, I have to be very sensitive to the originality of the film, the personal approach from the director, the personal contribution from the editor, and also the personal contributions from producers, or in fiction material or even documentary, somebody writing on scripts, or having a background in storytelling, that also should be listened to. So being an editor, you always look for the potential of the material. If it's with characters, either documentary or fiction. I mean, documentary, we tell stories about real people, but we treat them as characters in a story. So it's still, looking at the potential of a performance, or looking at a real scene from a documentary, looking for the moments that are sort of emotional, true, or whatever. It's not like journalistic. We're looking for the facts. It's more like looking for the emotional wave within the material. So that's a discovery, I think. So for me, there are always three people in the editing room, like you were. There's the director, the editor, and the film, right? And in my case, I'm there to fight for the film, for the best film. So I'm looking for the potential first within the film, and of course the potential of how personal, big an investment does the director have in the material in the film, and how big a personal contribution can the editor give the film. So this collaboration of the three is like, that's how I look at it. This is kind of a simple version, but I think my idea is to get inside the film and be with the film and be the film. And like in Rocky Mille, I remember it was very crucial we made a new start, as I recall it, that how did this guy get an idea? What was Fabio, what was his idea? How can we show within the frame of the film? This is sort of where this crazy idea was born. You remember the opening you made with the material you had, where he stands alone in the early morning by the stadium or park, whatever, where the concert finally took place. And then going through the film, I think we looked at it as a storytelling more, like how does a crazy idea become real? What does it take? And when it really took off, it was also because as an audience, which I have to be as an editor, you have to be the audience all the time. I fell in love with all these crazy people you had filmed, like this big drummer. I remember, I forgot his name, Vincenzo or something, the big drummer who was living with his parents. But the idea of meeting some of these people and really feeling them the joy and passion for the music they had, that's where you have to go when you edit. You have to find that and extract it and be careful about it and also push it. And then, you know, storytelling is also about finding new ways, so that you don't tell a story, it has to be told this way. Stories can be told differently, and all films are different. So you have to find the tone and the sort of mood and movement of that particular film. So that's what I'm looking for.
And how do you relate to a director that you haven't worked with, and you haven't, you know, you have to create a relationship in a very short time with the director. How is there a technique? How do you do that?
Well, the simple answer, and especially now, like in this Zoom era, or connecting through the internet, in this case, when you come into a room and you don't know anybody, I at least met you, and I didn't know Anita, the director, but it's like, I'm here to talk about your film. We're here to talk about film. And the great thing about film, which is now only 125 years or how long it is, it's a language that everybody understands all over the world. So film is a common language we have together, even though we're Italian or Danish or English speaking or wherever from. So I think it's a lot about, we have traditions for storytelling on film, but we also are constantly trying to be sure that this film has to be its own. I'm not going to make Anita's film into looking like any other film. Let's see how can we support the very idea of lifting and challenging her to make the best film she can do. And that's, in this case, together with you as a co-producer and editor. How are we together going to make the best film? And of course, when you sit with the film for a very, very long time, you lose a lot of perspective and overview. And I come in from completely out of nowhere. I'd seen the film once in advance, so I know what we're going to talk about. And we did one of the methods, because you're asking concretely for that. You had put the structure of the film up on the wall. You remember you made that
yeah, the yellow post-it all over the
yes, wall. And that's a good tool, because then I had asked you or forced you or whatever happened to sort of structure the film in scenes and in characters and in sequence and in turning points and structure and all, so that okay, let's look at this. Is it just a skeleton, or can we make it become alive? You know, that's what I told you probably, that if you can see the skeleton, the structure of something, it's usually dead, right? So you have to work for that. The structure is part of the dynamic storytelling that really makes this film want to fly. And so there's no sort of recipe to that. You have to talk about what is it with the audience. How can we make them very quickly relate to this guy? In this case, Fabio. Okay, this guy has a crazy idea that he sort of has to convince himself, his nearest friends, and the rest of the world. This is a great idea. I'm going to make it happen. So the film has to do the same job. You have to catch us, because this guy is a character within the film. But actually, in this case, with the Rocky Mille, the idea of this 1,000 people going together was even the main character, so to speak. It was bigger than him. So, but still, we are human beings, so we relate to other human beings. And film is basically about characters and emotional relationship between characters. It sounds simple, but that's what it is. So I have to go in that room and look for exactly that.
And what if the director doesn't want to do the changes? How do you approach that situation? Because in the past, it might have occurred to you like so many times you know, that you suggest something that you strongly believe it's the right thing to do, but the director doesn't want to listen.
Yeah, that's a problem, because maybe that's why I mean, from my own experience as an editor, you hate every time that you feel the insecurities of the director is an obstruction for the film to move on. Because I never had the urge to take over anybody else's kind of film. I want to make it the film that has the strength to say, okay, we can try this. Why don't we just start with the ending and open with the middle and move the beginning down and back and forth, or split it up or whatever. It's not sort of a method of just finding some strange new grip. It's like, what does this film need? So when the director is resistant, that's difficult, because you have to convince the director that we are doing all these ideas for experimenting with the film. Maybe at the end of the day, most of it will go back to, as you said, but we will have changed things, and especially you may have changed on looking at your own film. So, I mean, I don't recall I know you took over the film at a certain point. So in this case, the director needed also somebody else's view upon the film to make it a film. So it's very different from project to project. The experience of that directors, I mean, hopefully they get clever and clever in making film, or they get it more humble, that they know, whoa, you never completely learn how to make films. You are constantly trying to research or, you know, experiment. So I think, you know, you have to find the temperature of how can we in this room agree that we're going to talk about your film, and it's your film that's the main character. It's your film that we're trying to make better. Because, I mean, you know, as a producer also, you always have deadlines, you always have limited budgets and so forth. So you simply have to work your ass out, making it as good as you can within the limits, and try to break those limits on behalf of the film. That's the project. So if the director doesn't agree upon this, we ended up in modern times. Here's a program, it's called whatever, Avid something. You can edit your film, you can work on it. It may take you 10 years to get somewhere. You can do it just the way you feel, just the way you feel. But at the end of the day, you still have to have an audience. Somebody has to know, what do you want to tell me? What do you want me to experience? What emotions do you want me to have? So you need somebody to be part of that process, no matter who you are or how you work. So I think most directors, they probably consider that collaboration with experienced editors, cinematographers, producers, scriptwriters, and sound people and composers. And it's a big gift. It's a great gift for the film. And within our sort of tradition in Europe, we respect the director. It's the director on top of the whole thing. And it's part of that special collaboration of filmmaking. You can't have a collective decision making. You have to have one person taking the final decisions. And everybody involved knows this. That's part of filmmaking, as a collaboration, as a teamwork. And if you can't deal with that, you probably can't make films. If you don't dig teamwork, if you don't like collaboration, you probably cannot be a filmmaker. Apart from nowadays, as I said, you can do it all by yourself. You can shoot it, you can film yourself, you can act, you can edit it together, you can do whatever you want. So, yeah, so I think it's a lot about the idea that filmmaking is collaboration. So in my part, the role I had is like a supervising ideas, looking at possibilities that are sort of offers. This is not dictating what to do. I will only tell you, I will suggest things to do, right? As you recall, I'm not going to say, if you don't do this, I'm not coming tomorrow. I'll stay in my hotel. Great place.
No.
So I accept also being challenged, because maybe you come up with a better idea. Maybe you in the editing will say, I got another idea. We can move this scene. You are asking for a moment, but I know we have it, but it's a scene we never used. It's over here on the shelf, right? It's not on film anymore, but it's in a bin here. And I think part of the process coming from the outside is suggesting material that you will translate. And what you're looking for is a better presentation of the main character's idea. Okay, how can we create that? We don't have that scene. We have to make it. Which is the best moment that an audience can connect to this. So I think that was one of the things we solved within that week was, this is a difficult task, and you'd always work out a new beginning when you know the end, right? So you would always have to say, okay, let's look at the opening. Can we be more precise? Can we be more simple? Can it be much more unique and touching? Okay, this is where the connection is.
I recall that you came the first day of editing with a reference that you showed us.
Yeah, that's true.
Can you tell us about that reference? Because it was very mind-blowing for us. It was extremely useful.
Yeah, I think it's because actually the reference, the clip was from the film Woodstock, which in this case, it's a scene, or it's part of the film. It's a tune played by Santana, the group Santana that still exists. And in this case, this number is, I used to listen to it as a kid. I loved that tune when I was 10 years old. And it's probably even some of the music I heard from my father's record collection, and playing it on a little Italian Brian Vega transportable record player. And then he had a tape recorder with a microphone, and I would record myself playback and playing, and, you know, playing to this. I wanted to be a drummer. I had some bongos, you know. So this tune, when I saw the film later on, much later on, Woodstock, which is actually from late 60s, this tune, or this recording, this documentary film, it's actually, the editing is done by Martin Scorsese and his editor, Thelma Schoonmaker. They were very young and they did this, and it's really well edited. It's really, you still feel that you are there. You're at a concert. I'm part of this. Wow, let's have the guitar solo. Let's have the drums. So what I thought is, we're talking about film. So let's take an example that can inspire that. Okay, there's one thing in this film which is about the whole project and the idea, but there's also the tune, right? I forgot the name of the tune, the Foo Fighters.
Learn to Fly.
Learn to Fly. I was just going to say fly. Yeah, Learn to Fly. And this Learn to Fly number is going to convince the real Foo Fighters to come and play. It's also having to convince the people doing it. Shit, man, we can do this. It also has to convince the audience. This is just as great as Woodstock, right? So I thought this is a good place to start. Let's see. And I mean, you did do re-edit that. You worked on this scene for years probably, but you did a re-edit, and we found new stuff here and there. And from, I don't recall how many cameras, but there was quite a lot of material to look through, right? And many takes of that tune. So that part had to be specifically fantastic. And it was changed a little bit, as I recall. It was changed a little bit. And also we talked about, talking about sound and music, we talked about the necessity also to think about the mix of the dynamic. Like if you see a close-up of drums, you want to hear the drums and feel the drums. If you see a close-up of a bass, you don't want to not hear the bass. You want to hear the bass and feel it, right? So it was also a discussion about working with music. How can we get inside the music, so to speak? So that was my idea. So this is a good start for a dialogue on editing music.
Yeah, and actually, so to be clear, we even put a person to re-edit the whole clip for a week. The 2 minutes clip,
yeah,
just to to steal all the sound available, to re-edit completely the full clip of the Learn to Fly in order to give it more that live effects of being there with the camera, so hearing the difference between the different.
Passione d'amore, right? The Italian, the spirit of this is really the soul of the music, right? So I think that's why it was important, because I mean, then within the storyline where you had the big responsibility for making it a whole movie, this was the moment where this guy Fabio, he should now convince the Foo Fighters, come and play for us. We are some crazy Italians, but look what we gave you. And I mean, that's why it had to be so good, because at the end of the day, we knew making the film, it did succeed. They're gonna come and play. Probably because they saw this and said, wow, this is really great. This is our tune, right? So it's like looking for the moments within any kind of film that are the most important moments for the audience to get engaged with the film, but also for the storyline to sort of be born and relieved and lifted, learning to fly.
Yeah, and this brings us directly to my next question, which is, you told me that in your teaching, you also have this extremely peculiar teaching that it's the first time I hear, but I'm very curious to know more about, which is teaching to editors how to relate with to composers and how to use scores or soundtracks. So it's not about the editing of the film, it's about working with music and with people who compose music. So how does that work with what is this teaching about?
Okay, but this is to be quite direct. I think maybe music is the strongest emotional expression and impression for the audience you can put on a film. This goes for both documentary, where you have to be particularly, precise on what kind of music you use, where and why, and the same for fiction, because it can change the expression of an actress or actor completely, or the emotional content of a scene. Because what music can do is also, it can prolong, it can extend the moment that is really the emotional content. So in the first thing, I would always talk about with my editor students or supervisors, why are you putting on music there? Why is it starting there? Why isn't it starting a little later? Or if you do so, if you move it, or maybe even you edit the scene with music and you take it away. So it still has the texture or the construction or the composizione of the music. And then the thing is to be very precise with how does the music sort of move this scene into the next scene? How does that emotional content carry on? And on a big scale, you have to know your whole film. Where do we use music? Where don't we use music? What kind of music? When you edit, you can take Nino Rota, Sergio Leone, you can put all the best music in your edit or whatever you edit with, and you can use it as a temp music, right? Which is another dangerous thing, because now they're both dead, unfortunately. So we cannot have them, but you can be inspired by the extremely precise emotional texture of the music. So speaking will come, you have to have a composer very early in your process to make a composer should also, making film, be one really looking for the characters, looking for the emotional dimension and nuances of the characters, and knowing about drama in the sense, I'm going to work on a film. It's not a live concert. I'm not going to fill like 90 minutes of music. I have to look for where does the music contribute to the story. So it's a collaboration, and the great thing is working with different composers and different editors and directors working as well, is like some young people maybe, they say, no, we don't want all this violin shit and all this old kind of score. Let's listen to this. I have a guitar and I'm going to make sort of musical sounds with my guitar. How would that work? Combined with sound effects. How would you like I make these? I'll make my guitar, sound like the agony of whatever. So I just tried this recently, and this was quite interesting because the guy was a young guy wanting to become a film composer. So he did a lot of music which had some great textures, I would call it, that he was maybe not that keen on, understanding. Maybe we need a little more, dynamic shift from this scene to this scene. But he was, no, but I'm inside the film, and oh, he feels this and she feels this. So it's a constant idea, and I like to edit the music. I even get the music from the composer, but I would edit it and move around with the music. So I teach my students that the composers in particular, they have to be good at being in dialogue with the editing, give them temp music that is easy to edit and can sometimes be, like I would call it, transparent. The music allows the scene to be carried primarily by the dialogue, because you cannot usually have music that will interfere with the dialogue, but you can have music that is spaced around the dialogue. You can have music that is so transparent that you can barely hear its music. You don't know if it's the wind or if it's sound effect or where's it coming from, but you can emotionally, you can feel it. So, and nowadays with the techniques of, you know, 0.7, 0.1 and Atmos and all these kind of sound systems, you can be very precise. Where does the music come from? Which frequency rate of the music is in the room, and what's coming from the, you know, the sub or whatever, if it's a heavy kind of sound. So I think that the prime reason for editors being much into music is that it's so strong and emotional tool that you have to know how to use it and when not to use it. And you have to be open-minded for trying completely different music. Oh, listen to this South American guy, Santiolaya from Argentina, where he's from, playing great music. It adds something with a complete different touch to it, but it's a culture from somewhere else, but it gives to this. If you've seen Babel, you have seen, of course, in Yaritu, the music is done by a guy from South America, if you remember. And he has his own particular sound that goes really great with film taking place in Morocco and Japan. So the music, I think, yeah, it's very important that you are keen on it and use it when needed. In the Rocky Mille, you did also have some score, right?
Yeah, from Giorgio Giampa, which is a very, very good composer. And in our case, he wanted to play with 8-beat music. So he put inside, if you remember, those very, very peculiar scores created with the 8-beat programs. So very, very little nuances, and wanted to play with that. So it was very interesting to understand that there's someone who teaches you how to use music, how to relate to music, because I do agree that music is the most important, most effective tool to improve the emotional effects. And
yeah, what is and music? Sorry, and music is many things, because music can also be what do you call it? Music from reality, like real music, like tunes that exist, right? That could be, it's so expensive, so we can't just take in James Brown and Michael Jackson and Beatles, whatever. But in American films, they can. And it's sometimes it's really great that you can really use a very personalized piece of music for this character. She's like this, she loves this kind of music. So I think already in the process of writing a script or even developing a documentary, you can play music for yourself in the room, you get inspired, but you can also be very specific to use it. And then you have to fight with your producer to buy the music later on. It's like so that's one part of music, but you could also have I've had great experiences with composers reading the script and commenting on the script and saying, I think we need music here, but not there. I said, look, we don't know, let's make the film first. No, there should not be music on that scene. That's a wonderful love scene. There'll be no music, you know. So it's very important to not use music as sort of a cover-up or a solution to solve problems or something like that, but use it as what it is. It's the most you get really access to your audience's emotional.
Yeah, what is it exactly? What is it the most common, mistake or wrong attitude that you find in your students when they start, at the beginning? Because we all make
there's several. One of them is like what we call Mickey Mousing, right? It's like when you make the music do the same as the film does. The music is it's like an animation. The music just comments what you feel or see or should. It doesn't add anything. It's not like like out of sync or coming before, after, whatever. So that's one way. The other thing is the worst thing is like if you use a lot of film score as temp from something you will never get. You really get carried away by, oh, we love this music. Yeah, but it's done by Sergio Leone or Nilo or whatever. We cannot buy it. It was in the Fellini movie. That's where it's coming from. You cannot use it. But we can try to make something with that kind of feeling or that kind of sound. So temp music can be very dangerous because also directors tend to fall in love with it and they can never see the film without it. And then when you come to the mix, you have the problem. So it's also that the editor has a responsibility to also open that dialogue very early within the editing. Let the composer in, let the sound guy or girl in, and let's start also designing and thinking about sound. Because sound on film is such a big thing on a subjective layer, again, with the audience. You can tell so much more by using sound. And when you work with the editing, you have to have the timing, you know. The timing and the feeling of structure and dynamics relates to sound, to tough sound cuts, rough dynamic changes, all this. The strongest sound of all sounds is silence, right? So where have we silence? And so what is the bottom level? What's the top? That's kind of the dynamic range of the film. So I think for me, it's a lot about that also the composer is part of the collaboration in the room. It's the composer is also working for the film, listening to the director and pushing the film and the editor with ideas and possibilities. And nowadays also you can work in so many tracks, like stems, it's called, you know, that you can also change the music in the mix. You have a way of balancing everything. So when I actually always loved mixing, because that's where you really make the final composition of the film, just like a piece of music. How can the audience relate to this? So I do a lot of sound work in my Avid, and some people hate it because they know that shit, the director will have it like temp music. They want to hear that kind of sound design from the editing. But on the other hand, I just tell the sound people, your job is to make it much, much better than me. Your job is to make it work much better than what I could do. So I usually ask them very early to deliver sounds and, you know, deliver material that I can work with, because then they'll just get everything back. They get it all back. You can put it right in their Pro Tools session and make it better. So it's a collaboration, again, that's very important for the structure and feeling of the film. And so my best advice would always be, who's making the film in that part of it? Let's get them involved, because also when you go in documentary and also fiction, it's nice to have the sound recorder also making unique sounds from that film. Wow, we are in the mountains somewhere. Listen to the eagle flying around that mountain and the wind. How does that sound? It's a sound we never heard before on film. So let's record it, you know. So you also have to use your ears and tuning. So I love working with sounds because they have so much texture and expression that relates to us as human beings. It's one of our senses, right? So music and sound, yeah, it's, I don't know, it's a big part of it. And you can often even change something that where the performance was not that great, but adding music and sound, you can change it and then go back. Let's try and give it a chance. Let's see what happens if we, you know, take that reaction shot combined with music, make a little pause, and then go to that. What happened? And then magic starts happening, you know. So it's a very important part of the creative process.
Do you often work with the same composers, or you like to change for every project?
It's been very different during the years. I had periods where I worked with the same director and the same composer, which give you a lot of common language or a lot of common experience. And also the trust that next time we're going to make it, you know, more wild. But I tend to work more like, I think she would be great for this film. Like in this case, I think this composer, she would be perfect for this film. So it's more like casting. It's like casting actors. Let's find somebody who will enhance this this material. And I mean, it goes like, if you're a director, they change editors also, and they change cinematographers, they change producers, they change scriptwriters for the same reason, that they want to be, you know, meeting people with new possibilities and new ideas themselves. So it depends. I like to work with, yeah, some of the same, because I know about what they can, but I think I'm often also open for meeting new ones. And in this case, having taught so many in Copenhagen, which is a small film community, I know most of them. So I tend to sort of, you know what some are good at. And young people are not that afraid, some of them. to, yeah, but I'll bring in my best friend, he's the bass player, or, you know, they will collaborate also and bring in another composer maybe, yeah, but he's great with drums and rhythm. He's much better than me. So, but I can do something else. So, you know, each film has a different approach to that.
So without naming the characters, what can you tell us your worst experience in editing room without the names?
But you know, the thing is, I don't collect those kind of worst experiences. I think that's where I'm really editor. I cut them out. Yeah, those are the deleted scenes, you know. But what happens, I think, is that you know from your experience being in the editing room, when are we getting close to that kind of situation? That's when do you know not to be persistent that particular day in that particular moment to insist on doing something, because it's very difficult to say what's the worst in the editing room. Is more meeting indecisive directors, because the great word about director in English at least, but it comes probably from Latin and Italian, is they have to point the direction of the film. So otherwise they're not the director. So you have to remind them of the job they have to do, because that's the finest. They may be vulnerable, they may be indecisive, they may have a bad day, whatever, but they really have to stand up for the project, which is their film. So, you know, but then the fights you've had, of course you have fights with editors and producers. You know, I remember producers saying, we saw the uncut material yesterday, it was so funny. What the fuck did you do? It's not funny anymore. You took out all the fun. And you say, yeah, but we're telling a story here. Maybe it's not that funny. Or maybe we have to enhance the funny parts by taking out some of all the crappy dialogue you wrote, Mr. Producer, scriptwriter, because that's the problem. It may be funny for you to watch it uncut, like the timing, like we know that comedy is best in big shots, not in close-ups. So you know, those kind of processes you get accustomed to dealing with. So I don't collect all the bad moments. I try to learn from them, but usually, you know, then you're not afraid to go there either. You can go, okay, let's take those 3 days of conflict in the editing room, because at the end of the day, the directors will respect you for fighting for the film, right? They will not respect you for saying, okay, I'll do this for you. Okay, tomorrow you want another film? Okay, you know, then they get completely confused. So you have to take those fights. The other thing is, very shortly, is sometimes when you have worked on films that you yourself thought this was really, whoa, I'm not going to do that again. When the producer calls next time, you have to tell them, I'm sorry, I really don't have the time. I'm going to Torino for 4 months. I can't, no, you have to find someone else, you know. You have to not get involved.
So you're having a blacklist somewhere.
Yeah.
Diary with some names on it. Like
no, I tend to remember, but you know, people also change. And I've actually had quite a lot of those conflicts that were with like script writers on television series, you know, where script writers think they learned this from America. We are the kings, we know everything. No, you don't. I'm the editor, I know what the fuck is going on, you know. They would finally come, you know, after some fights, they would come back to the editing. Okay, shit, I admit it. It's in the editing room you really know what's the right decisions and the structure, and taking out those lines. Of course, you took them out. They were stupid, or I'd rather experience seeing instead of hearing, you know. So I've had quite a few of those. So actually, you know, these kind of relationships grow. So my best advice is always be as personal as you can be, and don't fool anybody. You have to stand up for yourself as an editor and have your sort of temper and your precision, because that's how it is. You never finish learning about it, the process. It's a constant movement working with films. You hopefully get better at it, but you know.
Yeah, there's no recipe to make a good film.
No. It'd probably be a boring one.
Okay. I think we have a lot. You wanna say something else? I think was very interesting to.
We can get back to it if you need it, because there are always things to say, but I think we've been around sort of like the headlines of what takes place in the editing room, the headlines of being, in this case, the supervising editing consultant. And to go that way, I mean, this is only it's due to experience. And a lot of people that you may not think could be good supervising editors, because they may be writers or producers or something very related to having the same view. Well, I'm going to look at your phone. Look, I'll read your script or look at your phone. So maybe sometimes, that's my experience, it's nice to ask actors or composers or, of course, colleagues. In Denmark, we have a wonderful tradition, really, to believe in each other as editors. We're not competitors. And of course, I've been a teacher, so I know most of the editors taught from the Danish Film School. But some of them, you know, my old teachers, I've had the same relationship to them, and they'd call me and say, hey, you have to come and look at a film I'm doing. I need to hear what your response is. So it's about giving other people a chance to react to the film, and then listening to what they say and translate that for your own best. And that's a nice thing we really do here. In Sweden and Norway, it's more difficult. Maybe Norway is getting better. They are so afraid to sort of let you in close. So it's been a cultural thing that I think we have had a great tradition for, that most directors will listen. It's only like Lars Von Trier did, though, on one film, have a box on the wall that said, good suggestions, put them in here, in the box. The box was without a bottom, and there was a rubbish can underneath, you know. Sort of but he does listen. He can slam the door and hate you for 2 days, but then he will get back to you and say, okay, you gave me something that gave me a better idea. So he knows himself, in this case, that he also needs somebody that he relies on. Either if he says this, I'll do the opposite, or if she says this, okay, I'll listen to it, you know. So I'm happy to be part of a tradition where we use this quite a lot. We try to give each other feedback on how can your film become better.
How was working with Lars Von Trier, for instance?
It's a long time ago now. I still have contact with him, but it's a long time ago. I was sitting in an editing room doing stuff with him, but it was it's one of these different films that were very different. It started when I was already a student at the film school, actually. I think I learned the most from him, actually, because he is the type of person who knows so much about filmmaking that he'll tell you, you know, which is the worst. Okay, I'm going home now. I rely completely on you. I trust in you. See you tomorrow. So now you really have to, you know, you have to do something. And then he's so precise that he will always tell you what works and what doesn't work. And he will tell you why. He will tell you this doesn't work because this, or we need to change the title because the title is not adding anything to this story. You should be dumb and just call it this. I used him myself in the beginning. Nowadays, he won't do it. But he used to be one coming into your editing room and helping you out as well, if you knew him. So I think I learned a lot of his extreme precision and also his urge to experiment, his urge to constantly make films that are different, that is trying something new. And because I know he knows so much, but he doesn't want to make a film that looks like, you know, his early films, some of them were technically really, you know, brightly done. And so then he took over the camera himself and it looks like shit, to be honest. And now he's still working. He has developed a method which is inspiring, which is like the actors get a chance to contribute with the scene. They can do it the way they think. Then he will change and tell how to be done. And then he films it in a way that you don't care about any rules of filmmaking. He will film, each shot is different. Each shot is so different that it can never have a continuity or kind of axis or people looking at each other with the next shot. And he doesn't give a shit because you can actually put anything together if it has the content that you really want to express. And what you get in this method is you get so many different layers of performance that you can make people act in a way that they cannot act, but you can edit it in a way that it gives you So I learned that from him actually, that he's really keen on each film has to have its own original set of rules, you can say, because he actually does set up rules for himself. He makes sort of limitations and obstructions, like the film done with his colleague Jürgen Lett, obstructions that he has to work under. So he's funny because he won't break those rules. Then you say, ah, come on, Lars, let's take that rule out. It's stupid. Nope, you can't do that. You know, with the dogma films, I was on a dogma film, and they would come and check you if you sort of, you know, didn't agree on the 10 rules, the 10 commandments. You know.
Right. If you break one of the rules.
Yeah, then you would be punished by, at least by him.
Yeah, that's one thing that I find usually in students. It's this obsession with continuity. When they really, you know, the common mistake, it's always like, I'm a good editor because look, the continuity is perfect, the movement is perfect. It's so
slick and mechanical, and so boring.
Which is something that Von Trier, for instance, broke completely. I mean, continuity went to hell with him, and it
exactly. I mean, what happens is if you do it, it looks like a multi-camera or cheap television news studio. And who's interested in that? You'd often rather see the one listening to the question than the one talking. So, I mean, already when editing dialogue or people relating, you're much more interested in what's he not saying? Why is he not saying that? Why is she asking the same question? You know, like journalists are so stupid. They just want the answers they already think they know. They already want the facts that they can read somewhere. And the continuity, you can't do that because then you break this rule. Well, they don't even understand it themselves because it's actually about looking at each other, right? The axis is only about making sure we are going to look at each other because the contact through the eyes in the editing is very important. But it turns out, due to Lars's experience, you can actually edit people together and not even looking at each other, but we still feel that they are. So it's you know, you cannot make this. This is a common, as you say, student mistake. That I'll make something that looks like a real film, but it isn't. It's not personal. It's not alive, so to speak.
Okay.
All right. The lovely thing is, Michele, you have a watch in the background, so I know it's like 21 minutes to 1 now. You have a clock on your shelf, so I can see. Yeah, it's great.
It was a full hour of interview, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
We started.
But great to see you again, and hopefully we can meet in real person during this 21. And don't hesitate if you have some projects. We can work at a distance, or hopefully meet each other again if you need some editing feedback.
Yeah, of course. I will send you this this project about the animation, so to have a
sure, great.
Of course, it will be very, very interesting. And you're into, you know, Latin American culture, so you're into it. I already know.
Yeah, I'm into it. You know, it's actually going quite well from our colleagues from last year, the Venezuelan film, Once Upon a Time in Venezuela.
I'm following it. They're being
great. I gave them a crowdfunding, and now I'm getting all kinds of emails of night sessions they have and discussions on the film, and it's great. So they are really going. Hopefully.
Yeah, I'm rooting for them. I mean, I really hope that they will get to the Oscar. I mean, they deserve it.
Sure, they do.
So
okay.
I will close this with a good luck to the film, so I can edit it in the end. So you can say something about like a greeting to people listening, and good luck to Wear the 1000. I don't know, something like that.
We'll get back to it. You can get back to me and we can do some follow up.
Okay.
All right. Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much, Thomas, for being with us.
Ciao.
Talk to you soon.
Have a nice day.
Ciao.
Ciao.